Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today I'm hanging out with Matt Click. How you doing today, sir? Good morning.
I'm doing well. Good morning to you as well. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's good afternoon here, but I know you're on the other side of the country.
Yes, yeah.
I already did morning. I've done all the morning
Yeah,
I can
you're
do
like
for
that's in
today.
the past, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. It's been a while since we've chatted.
Yeah, it has been. I think it's been a couple years since I've been on to chat with you guys actually at this point.
Yeah. Well, we kind of stopped doing the live chats for a while, but with all the
Yeah.
COVID stuff going on, we're like, hey, people are home. We have a captive audience. Why
Yeah,
not?
exactly. We know you all are home sitting on your computers anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're with AbTab, Absolute
Yeah.
Tabletop, and you're also a freelancer that does a lot of stuff. What are some of the things
Yeah.
people might know you from, but not necessarily know you from?
Yeah, so I have been like professionally freelancing for about 4 years now at this point, and on RPGs and board games. I've worked on some Wizards of the Coast products, namely, if you checked out Dungeon of the Mad Mage, I was one of the editors on that massive tome. I've also worked with Fantasy Flight Games on some of their board games, the new edition of Arkham Horror, some Descent expansions and things like that. Chaosium, Green Ronin, um, working with Onyx Path right now on their Came from Beneath the Sea and Beyond the Grave lines. And yeah, with Absolute Tabletop, written adventure kits, Oath of the Frozen King and Shadows over Drift Chapel. And we just finished A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrid, which we kickstarted a couple years ago. So yeah, I'm kind of all over the place. Do a little work here and there, but yeah, there's a good chance that my name is in some game on your shelf somewhere. So,
Do you have a favorite property you've worked on?
I think the most exciting was maybe Arkham Horror Third Edition, just because that was like the first one of the first like non-American style board games that I ever played, where it was like, oh wow, board games aren't just Monopoly and stuff. Like you can have a board game that's like cooperative and cool like horror elements and stuff, and you're running around with a shotgun and riding on a motorcycle and stuff. And it introduced me to Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos and stuff. So being able to work on the new edition of that board game was like really exciting and really rewarding. And it was one of those things where they offered me that job while I was on deadline with Wizards of the Coast. And I was like, as busy as I'd ever been in my life, I was like working until 2 or 3 in the morning every night. And they're like, hey, do you want to work on Arkham Horror? And I was like, sure. I don't need to sleep. Pile it on. Let's do it, But I just felt like I can't turn this down.
For Arkham Horror, what elements did you work on? Was as an
Uh,
editor or?
yeah, so I was an editor. So I the rule book, all of the cards, all of the board game assets. Basically, if there's text on a piece of the game, I looked at it, reworked it, making it as cohesive and coherent and concise as possible. So that was my role on that game.
You also did the proofreading for us on Out of the Box.
I did. Yes, that was a really fun project. I really enjoyed that. Lots of fun adventures in there. So yeah, my name will be in that book as well.
Your name is absolutely in that book as well. And if you find a typo, oh wait a minute,
Yeah, it's my fault. Yeah, if you find any errors, it's me. You can send them my way.
yeah. Arkham Horror is a game that used to appear. Ted would run these monthly game nights,
Mm-hmm.
and in at least like 3 or 4 different rooms, there would be different games going on. And Arkham Horror was always like in the dining room because required a
Yes.
lot of space.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, and if you get the expansions for I remember like in college we would rent out this big conference table, and my buddy had Arkham Horror, and I think he had like 2 or 3 of the expansions, and he would set it all up, and it would spill over onto multiple tables of this conference room. It was just enormous. And with the expansions, it was so difficult to keep track of everything. There were like 15 different, like, oh, we got to move the Haster tracker up one, and the great old one tracker goes up by one. Oh, the terror tracker went down and stuff. And it was just so complicated, but so fun.
I played once. I don't remember anything but the sprawling board, to be honest with you. It was
Yes.
like a
Yeah.
decade ago. I
Yeah.
Any game that goes beyond 2 hours, I'd rather be playing RPGs.
That's very fair. Yeah. Board games definitely have that like that like graph of like diminishing returns where it's like the
Yeah.
longer you play, the less fun it gets. Um, the nice thing about the third edition of the game is that they did away with the big giant board, and it's now like modular pieces that can fit together in different configurations. So depending on the
Like,
scenario that you're playing, like the locations, different
yeah.
locations can be used and they can be in different configurations and stuff. It's really cool.
Oh, so it sounds like they did kind of like the Betrayer House on the Hill style.
Yeah. Yep. Very, very similar. And it's like, it's way more streamlined and simplified. And a lot of the kind of archaic mechanics that make the game like feel a little like cheap or underhanded, go on too long, things like that. They kind of scaled back. And so it's really good. I really enjoy it. It's my favorite edition of the game so far.
House on the Hill is one of the few longer games that I'll play every time.
Yeah.
That
That's
one,
a great one.
it has a lot of replayability, and I think it is though more like the 2 hour to 3 hour range. So it's kind of like on the cusp of my tolerance.
It's like right in that perfect window. Yeah, for sure.
Um, what are some of your other favorite board games? Like I'm a big fan of like Quarriors and Smash
Oh
Up.
yeah. Quarrier's great. I am really enamored with this board game called Scythe, which is it's if you've ever seen that like art that's like the it's I don't even know how to describe it. It's like Baltic, like Russian, like early turn of the century art, but there's like mechs in it. So
Okay.
it's like, a woman like out like with a sickle like harvesting wheat, and there's like a gigantic mech like walking around in the background. They use that art and they developed like this world and this board game around it where you have mechs and it's like this big map and you move the mechs around, and it's just this really like elegant sort of game. I really love like the components of it and the way that it runs, and I love that like it's this big sprawling like almost like a 4X style strategy game, but it still feels like simplistic where it needs to. I really love that game a lot and don't play it often enough just because it requires 20 minutes to set up, and it is in that 3 to 4 hour range where people tend to lose interest. So um, for board games I like playing just like all the time. Ascension, it's like a deck building game that I
Hmm.
really like. That is, it's made by some former pro Magic players, so it has a lot of similarities with Magic the Gathering, but it's a lot simpler. Dominion, another deck building game that I really enjoy. I actually just picked up this game called Era, which is like a city building game. But the funnest part about it is that this you actually build a city, like you have little plastic buildings and you put them on a grid, and it's like just so fun to sit there and like, ooh, I'm gonna build another church. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
gonna put it right here, and you like have your walls and stuff. And I'm such a kid. I love any game where I get to like build something or little plastic pieces put together. So
That
yeah.
sounds cool. I've played Ascension and Dominion before. There's
Yep.
another one that's just like those two, I think too. I can't think of it. Generally, I get all of my board gaming through Ted because he's
Right.
just got shelves and shelves.
You just absorb it by osmosis, and
Yeah, pretty
that's
much.
kind of it. Yeah, yeah.
I'm a big fan of like dummy games that you can just play over and over again. I would like rather play probably like five of the same game in a
Yeah,
row
for
than
sure.
like one long game.
Yeah, like I love like a good like just like impenetrable, complex, like 5 hour board game as much as the next guy. But I also love like unstable unicorns. Takes 10 minutes to play and 2.5 minutes to explain all the rules, and you can play, 5 or 6 games in the span that it would take you to play one game of Scythe or something similar. So yeah, there's definitely some like merit to games like that for sure.
If you played any like Zombie Dice or Aliens,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Zombie Dice, I was the game when I worked at a FLGS. Zombie Dice was our behind the counter game. It was so easy
hmm
for the employees to just play like Zombie Dice endlessly behind the counter because it was literally just a cup full of dice. And
yes,
I was the reigning Zombie Dice champion. I could not be beaten at that game. That was like my game for a long time.
nice. The dice,
Yeah.
the dice smiled favorably upon you.
Yes, yeah, which is funny because it's like a very little skill involved in that game. It's very much just, hey, I hope the dice roll well.
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of knowing when to stop pressing your luck.
For sure. A lot of risk reward for sure. Yeah. I was always just very good at like knowing exactly when to stop. So yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So what's AbTab got going on nowadays?
Yeah, so I feel like we're kind of like almost emerging from a cave, because for the last couple of years we've been working on this gigantic book called The Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin. This is a book that we funded on Kickstarter a couple of years ago. Um, and we actually made the really difficult decision to take another year working on it. We were coming up on our delivery. Whenever you do a Kickstarter, you have your expected delivery date. We were coming up on that, and it was just this one of these things where we had this really like difficult meeting where it was like, I feel like this book needs more time. I feel like we need more time to really hone in these elements that are really important. And so we made the decision to delay it. And it was the best decision we ever made because the book is so much better for it. And we just released the PDF to backers and pre-order customers a couple weeks back. Response has been great. We're currently right now getting the PDF like finalized and ready for printing. And it's 450 something pages, absolutely massive. If you own any of the Fantasy Flight Star Wars games like Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, that's the size that this book is. And like me and Michael Barker laid out the entire book together, and it was just, I've never worked so much on a single thing before. It was so insane. But it's so cool to look through this gigantic book and see stuff that you've worked on for years and years and years. So we're kind of emerging from the Dead Man's Guide cocoon a little bit, and we're able to again work on some other projects. And so Michael Barker he's getting prepped for our next Kickstarter, which is going to be another adventure kit, hopefully kickstarting this summer. Really excited about that. That'll be our third adventure kit in that line. And then I'm working on a new playtest for our Harbinger system, which is our 5th edition sci-fi fantasy sort of setting and supplement for that system.
So you guys got some cool stuff coming up.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Absolutely. Man, that's a lot of book. Are you done with Dragon Grim at this point though?
Oh my God. I'm like I love that world and I love that book, but I'm so ready to be done. Like I'm just like, if I have to read one more page about Dragon Grin, I'm gonna lose it.
How many?
It's like I'm just not used to sitting with something for that long. You know what I mean? Like I'm used to working on different things, and then it's like, nope, you have to work on this one project for 2 years. You can't deviate.
How many Dragon Grin dreams have you had?
Oh God, just so many, so many. I don't regret a single moment working on that book though. And honestly, it was we've published a lot of books, Absolute Tabletop, but we've never published something more than 100, 120 pages. All of a sudden, we have this massive book, and it was such a trial by fire. It was such a learning process about like making sure that everything feels cohesive, making sure that the world feels like a world, and which section comes after this section and the flow of the book, and thinking about how information is presented and when do we need to introduce this concept and when does this NPC need to come in and how do we present adventure elements in this book, and how modular do we want it to be versus how concrete do we want it to be. And it was such a rewarding process to see it all come together. And there are so many times when my stress surrounding this book has just been insurmountable, where I'm just like, I can't work on this book anymore. It's stressing me out. But now it's here, and it's like, it's so cool. It's so cool to look at it and be like, hey, we made that book. We made it together. So
who is the World of Dragon Grin for? What's the elevator pitch?
Yeah, so the elevator pitch for Dragon Grin is basically that it is a fantasy world where evil has won. So think like if Sauron won the War of the Ring, what would Middle-earth look like afterwards? So in Dragon Grin, there's this tyrannical ruler known as the Dismembered Lord, and at the canonical start of the book, it's been 20 years since he won this cataclysmic war against the forces of good in Dragon Grin, and so he kind of controls the world with this iron fist, but there's these pockets of light and hope throughout the realm. And when you create your character, you decide not necessarily what race you are, but where you're from. You choose a culture and a heritage. So you choose both a race and also a culture that you've grown up in. So the cultures of Dragongrin include, elves and dwarves and humans and all of that, all living together, working together, trying to survive in this dark realm. So if you're into dark fantasy, if you like worlds that are a little bit grittier, a little grim, but with these beacons of light and hope, Dragongrin is definitely something to check out. It also has a lot of fun, like Magitech elements to it. There's fun, like alien technology from eons past that you can like scavenge for and build and craft and things like that. So, yeah, it's a really cool world. Like, I love it. I love Dragongrin, and I'm so ready to be done with it as well.
Well, working on it now, you can now might be time to kick back and play instead
That's
of
the
work.
thing, is that I'm like, in writing the book, there were so many times when I was like, this is such a cool thing. I can't wait to like play a character from this culture, or I can't wait to explore this region. But I have to finish the book first. And now that the book is done, it's like I can run Dragongrin games, I can play in Dragongrin games, so I can actually explore the world that we've created together. So that's really exciting.
I want to jump into the chat. There's a couple questions. Let's start picking them out. So Chance's D&D spellbook. He makes these cool like animated, better than stick figure videos.
Okay, cool.
But Matt, you seem super cool. Matt is super cool, and I'm always open to trying out new games. That being said, what would you say the more popular role playing games are outside of D&D, of course?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, games that I really enjoy playing outside of D&D are like Call of Cthulhu. That's a completely different feel than D&D. It's more modern. It's a little bit more grounded in reality, but there are elements of horror and science fiction, and you get to investigate and stuff like that, which is really cool. I love Call of Cthulhu. Recently, been getting into the Fantasy Flight Games Legend of the Five Rings new edition, which is really good. It's similar to like their Star Wars stuff, but has some cool thematic differences as well. They came from Beneath the Sea and they came from Beyond the Grave lines of Onyx Path Publishing. If you're into like 1950s like B movies, these games are designed to run games like that. Like they talk about it in cinematic terms, almost like you're directing a like 1950s horror sci-fi B movie, rather than playing a role-playing game. And it's a really kind of novel approach to doing something like that. I've never really seen a game do that before. So yeah.
Kamo wants to know any monsters or mechanics you've taken from board games into D&D.
Oh, that's a good question. I think that I don't think that there's anything off the top of my head that I can think of in terms of like bringing mechanics from board games into D&D, but I do think that it sparks an interesting discussion where people's issue with like 4th edition D&D was that it felt too board gamey. So now people tend to shy away from board gamey elements in RPGs, but I feel like that's like a mistake, because we can learn a lot from board games and how they present mechanics and how they limit the scope of the game. Because RPGs are always all about like, you can do whatever you want, you can try anything, but that's not really always the case. Like there's definitely like RPGs want you to play a certain way and they want you to do certain things. Like it's not like you're going to play D&D and be like, we just want to open a bakery and bake bread. That's all we want to do. Like D&D is not designed for you to be able to do that. They want you to go into dungeons. They want you to fight things. They want you to get treasure and loot and go on adventures and stuff like that. So I like taking that, like the philosophy of board games where it's like, we're going to tell you what tools you can use and how we want you to play the game. I feel like we could use that a little bit more in RPGs sometimes.
So Ted has an adventure he runs using House on the Hill.
Oh yeah,
he's done several different incarnations of it, but when he plays it in person now, he just uses the tiles,
right?
And uses the same concept of the haunted house, and then then he's modified some things. And usually he like has a particular theme that he slaps on the adventure for that evening.
Right.
But it's all based off of the tiles and drawing
Yeah,
and using using the tactical map or whatever. I mean,
for
obviously it's
sure.
not to scale, but people seem to like it. I thought it was a cool idea when he started doing it.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to be gained from thinking about role-playing games in terms of board games, just because they are very fundamentally different experiences, but they can learn a lot from each other. And board games are more and more adopting RPG elements into them. And so it's cool to see some RPGs that are adopting more like gamey elements to them as well.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say about board games is because of the that niche is so much larger than RPGs, you have a much
Mm-hmm.
bigger, larger pool of a collective consciousness to draw from
Totally. Yep.
compared to RPGs, which is kind of tiny.
Yeah, it's people I don't think realize how small the pool of people playing RPGs is. It's obviously it's a lot of people and it's a lot more than it used to be, but it's still compared to board games and of course video games, it's like infinitesimal. It's like a tiny population of people.
So, is there a property that you haven't worked on yet that's kind of like in your sights? Like this would like kind of cap out or top off your kind of career?
Yeah, so that's a funny story actually. I've done some work for Cubicle 7 in the past, and they were working on the second edition of the One Ring RPG, which is their fantastic Lord of the Rings role playing game. And I was brought on as a adventure writer for those books, and I was writing adventures in Middle Earth. Like I was writing like in Tolkien's world, and I have such a love and a passion for Middle Earth and the Tolkien like fantasy that it was really a dream come true. And then they lost that license like a couple months before they were going to start shipping pre-orders of the One Ring second edition. And so there's a bunch of content that I wrote
Mm.
that'll never see the light of day. I would love to work on a Lord of the Rings game, and I was so close. I was so close, and but they lost the license. It was such a bummer.
Yeah, I want to say last summer they had been like reaching out hardcore trying to get people to kind of to try and pull influencers in on
Right.
that. And I don't know. So I know like with movies, a lot of times if you don't use a property over a certain amount of time, then you'll lose the
Yeah.
license.
Yep.
And was it like kind of that deal, or maybe you can't even talk about it?
I don't know the specifics. I just know that like I got an email from the line editor who was basically just like, "Hey, like, you all are still getting paid obviously for your work, but we're not releasing the books and we're not working on it anymore." I just know that like working in licensed RPGs is often more trouble than it's worth. And we see that in, I mean, Fantasy Flight Games laying off their entire RPG department and letting the Star Wars, license lapse for their RPG potentially. Like, it costs a lot of money to license something like Star Wars,
Uh,
like Lord of the Rings. And it takes a lot of extra bandwidth in order to do that, because you have to make sure not only that you're creating a product that is to the standards of your company, but you also have to greenlight everything by the license holder and make sure that they approve of everything and that they're happy with it, and that you're not doing anything that is against the like mission statement of that license. And so it's really difficult to work in licensed RPGs. And we see this again and again where licenses are going back and forth and going from one company getting picked up by another, and various editions coming out within a couple of years of each other. And it's just because like licenses are fickle and it's really difficult to work with them.
yeah, I imagine. I never felt like Fantasy Flights really got the Star Wars RPG out there. Like, if you played RPGs, you probably knew about it, but if not, no. So
Right.
like I would think like something like that might pull in like new audience, but I don't feel
Yeah.
like it did.
No, and I think that Fantasy Flight, I mean, they've always known that their board games and card games, like that's their moneymaker. That's how they sustain themselves. And so I think that there was a lot of emphasis put on the board games and the card games rather than the role playing games, which is a bummer because they were coming out with a new splat book for Star Wars every 2 months. It was
Yeah.
insane, the amount of content they were putting out there. But, you know, there was a very small number of people that were buying up every single book that they were putting out. So
yeah, to be effective with that, you really needed to reach new audiences.
yes, yeah,
And I just don't feel like that happened. I felt they were reaching the RPG community, but that goes back to that's kind of small, and you're just slicing off a piece of that small audience.
Yeah, it's getting bigger and it's getting better, and you know D&D is consistently having its best year every year, following the release of 5th edition. And so I think a lot of companies are seeing that and saying, well, we need to get, a slice of that pie. We need to be hitting that pool of players. But the issue is that a lot of those new D&D players are then not branching off and playing other role-playing games. They're not going to play Star Wars from Fantasy Flight Games. They're just going to play more Dungeons and Dragons. And so,
I have a theory there.
Yeah, hit me.
My theory is it's going to happen, but there's going to be a lag. And I don't know how big that lag is, right? Because, like, if you think about... So when I came into gaming, it was a lot different because it was D&D, right? It was TSR. Mm-hmm. It was easier to get into new games because TSR would put out new games, and they were D&D. Right. But then once it became just basically D&D, I feel like the branching out is harder. But it does happen eventually, right? Eventually, you're like, oh, how can I do this with D&D? And you start trying to figure that out, and you go, oh, wait a minute, there's a game that does that. And some people will still try and do it with D&D, but other people will be like, oh, let me check this out. But I feel like it's going to happen. But I don't know what that lag is. I don't know if it's a year. I don't know if it's 2, 3, 5.
Yeah. I don't know either, man. And it's like, it's difficult. Like with Absolute Tabletop, none of us are depending on Absolute Tabletop for our livelihood. We all have other jobs that we're doing and stuff. And so there's a lot less risk with Absolute Tabletop and putting out books and doing Kickstarters and things like that. But for these mid-sized RPG companies like your Green Ronins and your Cubicle 7s and your Modifiuses, although Modifius is getting up there, but these are companies that employ people full time, and they need to be able to pay those people, but they're also working in an industry where all of the money is being funneled in one direction and it's not really making its way left or right,
I mean, Green Ronin, they've had some cool things that they've done in the past. Titan's Grave was really early, and was cool, and they had Will Wheaton on board, and his name's in the book.
They've got Mutants and Masterminds, which is one of the few superhero RPGs out there that's still getting support and things like that, and it's insane to me that more people aren't playing Supers RPGs with how popular comic book movies are right now. I feel like that's just a no-brainer. I feel like everyone should be playing Mutants and Masterminds right now.
Yeah, it's how do you reach those audiences? Yeah, we talk about Mutants and Masterminds pretty often here. Yeah. That and Marvel Phase Rip.
Yeah, right. The two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll always have a fondness for that game. We actually did 2 seasons on our channel. Of Marvel Phase Rip, and it just cracked me up because it was a game that's been dead for 30 years.
Yeah,
but it was but for its time, it was really good and ahead of its time.
Right. Well, I'm still rocking West End Games Star Wars. That's my preferred Star Wars system. So, there's some validity to that for sure.
It was I think so. I feel like the Marvel Phase Rip game was the first game to use experience as an asset you could spend.
Right, you could burn XP for different things.
Yeah, so it had So you had a karma system. It was what they called their XP, and it actually used to started out with a certain number based off your stats. But as you did things and locked up villains and saved people, you got more karma, which you could then spend to advance your character, or you could spend it to change your die rolls during the game. Yeah. So you had to choose. Yeah.
See, I love that. That's going back to West End Games. That's your character points in West End Games. It's you could use them to level up, or you could get an extra die in your pool for this role, And so it's you have to weigh the options. And I love experience as a resource that can be taxed. That's such a novel concept in game design, I feel.
I think so. A lot of the people that I kind of follow worked on West End too. Wasn't Chris Paramus didn't he work on that?
I'm not sure if Chris Paramus did.
I know did for sure, right?
Yeah. There are like quite a number of people who are still active in the industry who are working for various companies who worked on splat books and stuff for West End Games Star Wars. I mean, I think that's West End Games Star Wars is, I think, the first licensed RPG to really like make a splash and like become known. And it's insane to me that they like sent books of West End Games RPG source books to like writers who were writing Star Wars novels of like, use these as reference. These West End Games guys have got it figured out. Like they've named all the alien species and the ships and stuff that we didn't have time to name. So use these books. Like that's crazy to me that had such a big influence and a big effect in the like early 90s for the Star Wars revival.
I'm going to guess you're a Mandalorian fan?
Oh yeah, yes. Really, I love all Star Wars, man. Even I love the prequels unabashedly. Although, you know, I have some minor issues with them, but anything Star Wars, I'm a huge fan. So
I wouldn't say I loved them, but I also didn't hate them either. I'm very casual with a lot of things, so I'm not that vested. I'm like,
it's a good attitude to have, Dave.
Blow some things up, try and work a story in there. I'm good.
Yep.
Another one is Pacific Rim. People bashed that and hated them. I'm like, what do you mean? Giant monsters, giant robots. What are they going to do? They're going to fight. What else? They're going to fight.
Exactly. I love anything with mechs too. That's another one of my soft spots. Is anything mecha. So.
Well, you're also doing something with that too, right?
Yeah, I released a it's called the Mecha Hack, and it's a hack of the Black Hack, which in itself is kind of a hack of OSR D&D. And so it's basically a really like slick rules light system to play mecha games. So if you want to do like a Gundam game or Robotech, if you want to fight kaiju like in Pacific Rim, like it's the easiest way to do it. So
yeah, that stuff's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So friends of mine, Devil's Luck Gaming, they're doing a mecha game. I don't know what system they're using, because I don't watch stream games. But
there's a few that have come out in the last couple of years. I feel like we're seeing a mecha revival too, because in the last couple of years we've gotten Lancer, which was huge on Kickstarter, and Beam Saber, which was just on Kickstarter as well. And Beam Saber is a Forged in the Dark game that's mech, and Lancer's crazy, man. That book is huge, and it's so customizable in the way that you can build your mech.
I don't know if I'm mashing a couple games together, but I think they're playing The Expanse, and they have mechs.
Oh, okay, cool. That's another Green Ronin game, is The Expanse. They own the
That is literally why I started watching that show.
Because of the RPG?
Yeah, I haven't even touched the RPG. I didn't back the Kickstarter, but I was intrigued, by the story of it, right? That it became, that they turned this RPG into a series, but then I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's also books and stuff.
Yeah, there's books, and then the show, and then the RPG.
Yeah, but no, that story's kind of interesting, because my understanding is the guys that wrote the books, it's based off of RPG they used to play.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, I've heard that story too, that they kind of base the events and the characters off of a game they used to play, which is, I love that. That's so amazing.
Yeah, and then they turned it into books, and then it got picked up, and then it got its own actual RPG.
An actual RPG, yeah. Everything in cycles, man. It all loops back, yeah.
Yeah, talk about full circle.
Mm-hmm.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about Mecha Hack?
Yeah, so it really, at the time, there weren't a ton of mecha games out there. Of course, now there's like 3 or 4 that are amazing, but the Mecha Hack is specifically like rules light. You can pick it up and play it in a couple minutes. The basic gist is you choose a pilot type, and they're like the archetypes from like anime. There's the commander, and then there's like the maverick, who's like the bad boy. There's the you can be the like wisecracking, like doughy guy in the cockpit making jokes. And then you choose your chassis, which is like the mech type. And there's like a balanced sort of versatile one. There's a big tanky one. There's one that's a little bit faster and sneakier. And you combine your pilot type and your mech chassis, and then you choose these modules that are things like, missile launchers or jump jets or a vehicle mode, so I can turn into a jet, things like that. And all of it is super simple. It's a roll under resolution. So, if you're trying to attack something, you just roll the d20. If you roll under your stat, you hit, you deal damage. It's a really, I think it's really fun. I've run a ton of it. It's great for conventions because people just show up and you just hand them a character sheet and it's ready to go. Super simple. And yeah, it's based on The Black Hack by David Black, which is just one of my favorite rules light games out there. So I messaged him a while back and was like, hey, I'm really interested in doing a mecha version of your game. Would you be cool with that? And he was like, go for it. So he's super open about that kind of stuff. So very cool.
That kind of reminds me of when you talk about the transforming into vehicles, reminds me of a game I pitched my group for Mutants and Masterminds, but they weren't buying it. A Transformers game. I was like, Mutants and Masterminds would handle that really well.
It really would, yeah. Well, hey, if you ever want to run a Transformers game, Dave, Mecha Hack, it's like $4 on Drive-Thru RPG. Just check it out.
Nice. I will have to. The issue is there's way too many games and not enough time.
There's too many games and not enough time. Exactly.
Yeah. How big is that book?
It's like 30 pages. It's here.
Perfect.
I'll grab it. I will show you. How small this book
is. That is perfect. When anyone ever asks me, do you want to look at this or do that? I'm like, how many pages is it?
Look how small. Look at it's a little. See? And it's got Hankering for a Nail from Runehammer. He did the art. So all the art is it's gorgeous, like black and white.
Nice.
Runehammer art.
He lives in our hood now, man. He's like 20, 30 minutes away from us.
Yeah, he used to live in my hood, and you guys stole him.
We did steal him. And we're supposed to hang out, but then the apocalypse happened.
Yeah. No, I went over to his place a couple times when he lived in this area, and it was always a hoot. He keeps a Warhammer next to his front door for it's like an anti-burglar. He's got this Warhammer sitting next to his front door.
Sure, of course. Why wouldn't you?
Of course. Yeah. It's one of those things where you see it and you're like, yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah. So Bowen wants to know for both of us, is there a property or universe that you would love to see turned into an RPG?
My answer to that is really exciting because it's happening. Dune, the Dune universe by Frank Herbert. Modiphius is working on a licensed RPG for that right now, so I'm very excited about that.
Huh. I wonder if that's going to be another. They use what, like a double?
The 2D20 system. It absolutely is going to be because they that's what they use for everything, and they have Modiphius is they're just like anyone who's like, hey, we got an RPG license here. They're like, I'm taking it. Yoink, we'll take it. Like they have so many RPGs that they're working on. It's crazy.
I wonder if that strategy is working or not.
I wonder about that too, because I'm like, those licensing fees got to add up. They've got Fallout. They've got just all kinds of licensed RPGs.
And Star Trek.
Conan, Star Trek. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But the Star Trek I was going to say is they were shutting down streams and stuff. You can't.
Whoa, I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, they couldn't stream that game. Not from Modiphius, but from the property itself. They were getting cease and desist.
Wow,
which is weird. It's
that's crazy.
Super.
I don't understand why people wouldn't want you to free advertising.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I've got an oddball one. So there's a series that I read that is kind of like a hard-boiled space opera-ish, kind of comedic, and it's a Hard Luck Hank.
Oh, Hard Luck Hank, yeah.
That
would be a zany RPG, man. I'd be into that.
Yeah, have you read any of those?
I have not read any of them, but I'm familiar with the basic idea behind it. Yeah, and I feel like that would be perfect for an RPG.
All the names for the titles are all stupid.
Yep, yeah. That's it. I would do stupid punny titles for every session. Would have some stupid title.
That would totally work. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes you just need something. It'd be a great beer and pretzel type game.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. It has its own kind of flavor and feel for sure.
So we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but So now you're working so much in RPGs and board games, you don't get to play them anymore.
Yeah. It's really weird. It's I love the fact that I'm more and more of my work is in that realm where I'm working on games, but at the same time, it's like I used to, like, before bed, I would sit and read RPG books. I would get a new RPG book and I would sit in bed and I would read it, and it was just like one of the best things. And it's like, I don't want to read an RPG book for like 12 hours at my computer and then go to bed and crack open an RPG book. Like, I don't, there's not as much time and not as much need for me to do that. And like you're saying, like playing in RPGs, I just haven't been playing in as many games. And part of that is just the fact that, like, I have a toddler and work has been busy and things have been kind of crazy, but it's also just there's less of a desire to play RPGs as well, just because I'm constantly absorbing them. It's like I don't feel that pull as much as I used to, for sure.
Yeah, you're just immersed all the time.
Yeah, it's just constant. And it's like it's the same reason why I have a hard time picking up a book and reading it, because I read professionally. I literally, like, I'm a professional reader to some extent, where I'm like constantly analyzing. Like, if I crack open a book and I start reading it, I can't help but be in editor mode where I'm like rewriting sentences and stuff while I'm reading, and it's so irritating. I hate it.
What about audiobooks?
Audiobooks, I have a hard time paying attention to. And I tried that. I'm the worst, dude. I'm like putting on an audiobook and I'm like drifting, like thinking about something else. Like, and I'm like, oh shit. And I have to like rewind it all the time. And so I'm like, I don't know. I need to find a new method for like absorbing books and transitioning into like fun reading versus work reading.
You need to download it. It just needs to you need to jack in.
Just put me in the Matrix and let me read all of Brandon Sanderson's books, so I don't have to.
Dude, I am right there with you. I don't have good excuses like you do, though. I just find myself not like I'll start reading a book and then just stop, and it's like, it wasn't that I wasn't enjoying it. There was like nothing wrong with the book,
right?
And I don't know what's going on. It drives me nuts. And like I used to read and absorb books the way people watch TV shows. I would read a book every 2 to 3 days. Mm-hmm. Get a stack of comic books and go through those in a day. But anymore, it's like I just can't get myself to do it. I can't pay attention the way I used to when it comes to the audiobooks. When I drove a lot, that's when it was kind of great, because like literally... focus on driving and listen to a book.
You have nothing else to do. Yeah. It's great for that. And I don't have commute time anymore. I work here in this, space. And so my commute is walking down the stairs. So I don't have that built-in time to kind of transition from work into something else and maybe listen to an audiobook or a podcast or something like that. So
I feel you there. I mean, so now we are getting in, I am getting in gaming at least. Like, we just had a session 0 this morning for the next D&D game we're playing.
Nice.
And then we just wrapped up playing an in-house game that we do Thursday mornings. And then the thing that I want to do more of, though, is play other games other than D&D. That's the trick. So we've got a couple sessions of a game that's it'll be kickstarting in June. Mm-hmm. It's Maximum Apocalypse. It's actually a board game.
Yeah, it's a board game, and he's doing the RPG version. He actually ran that at AtCon last year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Scott, was it Scott that was out there? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's pretty active over in the AbTab group. So Mike Nade owns the company. I think it's Rock Manor Games, and they're actually kind of local to us. They're just in Delaware, so they're not far away.
Right.
So they're like, hey, do you want to check this game out? So we played a couple of sessions, and we're going to stream a game. But it's a lot of fun. The concept is cool. It's it was nice to like get away from D&D for a little bit and play something different.
Totally different flavor and feel, for sure.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to play it, or did he just ran it?
No, but I was in that, like, walking around checking out the games mode, and he's just like, the character sheets and the assets and stuff he had prepared was just like awesome. Like really like well prepared game master, and he's like his love of the game like really shows through for sure. So it looks really cool. I would love to try it at some point.
It's fun. I mean, it's a D100 under system.
Mm-hmm.
It's crunchy. Like if you don't like crunchy games, it is definitely crunchy.
Yeah.
But I also felt like it flowed a lot better than some of the other crunchy games I've played.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Something that I've been really enamored with is the idea of solo gaming. And this is like kind of not a new concept, but it's definitely having a little bit of a resurgence. And it's funny because like my dad is actually a game designer too, and he put out this game called Ironsworn. And Ironsworn is actually designed to be played without a game master. It uses like tables and things like that.
Holy shit, that's your dad. That's been talked about on the channel a couple times now.
Yeah, Sean Tompkin is actually my dad. Yeah, and it's funny when people find out because we go by different names, and so they're like, "Holy shit, Sean Tompkin is your dad," or like, "Holy shit, Matt Click is your son." But I worked on one of the recent Ironsworn supplement that came out, Delve, with him, and that is like for going into dungeons and like fighting monsters and stuff, like more of like a D&D style experience. And I really want to run a solo campaign on my channel. Like I want to sit by myself, have the chat help me out creating things, and I want to play a solo RPG and see how it goes.
Yeah, the challenge with that is lag.
Yep.
You need to, so either you or someone else needs to be typing the stuff in chat so you can like defeat the lag.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise there's like 15 seconds. Yeah. But like that concept is really cool to me, of like being able to sit and play a role-playing game, even if you don't have your friends around, even if you don't have a game master willing to run it for you.
When we did the Marvel Phase Rip game, the chat became part of the game.
Yeah.
And they became characters in the game. So I don't know how it happened, but we ended up with like a bunch of city animals like pigeons and rats and ravens.
Right.
And it was weird. Like I felt like the game at some point was more about them than us.
Yeah, like kind of went off the rails. You're like, well, we jumped the shark, but we're just gonna go with it here. Yeah.
Just happened. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. You've got the gaming lineage.
Yeah, I've got game design in my blood. Absolutely. Yeah, and he's actually working on a sci-fi Ironsworn called Starforge that is looking really cool. So I think I actually might be playtesting that tonight with him. So that'll be fun.
I guess you'll find out.
Yeah.
Ironsworn has actually just recently come on my radar as a game to check out. So.
Yeah, it won the ENnie last year for the best free product, because the book itself is free. You can get it on DriveThruRPG or the website for free, and then the supplements, are you have to pay for them. But the actual book itself, I mean, it's 200 something pages totally for free, and it's a full system, so it's really cool.
So is your dad in game design on RPGs or board games?
Yeah, just RPGs, and this is actually the first thing that he's published, but he's always tinkered with game design for as long as I can remember. I remember being a kid and playing RPGs with him and having him like homebrew stuff and do different things, or like he would use like Savage Worlds or like Fate to run a game, and he would have gone in there and like messed with stuff and kind of turned some dials to do some different things. And so he's always done game design as a hobby. And just a few years back, he started working on Ironsworn, and it's really taken off. It's really, for what it does, it's really the only system out there that does what it does, which is like really focused, like quest-based gameplay that allows for either co-op or solo play. And being able to sit with another person and run a game and collaboratively come up with what's happening together is like, it shouldn't work as well as it does, but it really, really does.
Yeah, I was just talking about it with Ryan Chappell the other day, and and they had played it, and and I think they used the GM-less, so that where everyone was creating everything. So it just sounds like a pretty cool concept.
Yeah, and it's sort of powered by the apocalypse, but with some differences. The die mechanics are different, and the way that they're called oracles, they're basically roll tables. The way that they work to kind of spur the imagination and spark ideas and stuff. It's really cool because you basically, you roll and you get, the result on the roll table and you go, okay, well, what does that mean based on what's happening right now? And collaboratively you come up with it. Well, hey, maybe it's giants, or, maybe we come upon a camp of beast folk or something like that. Like, you just kind of come up with stuff on the fly together. And it's really cool. It's like a very unique way of playing role-playing games. Like everyone is sharing the load of what would normally be carried by the game master.
So one of the things I just kind of thought about, like when you're talking about your dad and his experience, and like this is kind of the first thing he's put out and published, is this hobby is different than others in the sense that every game master is potentially a game designer at the same time, just by the nature of what we do, and to different degrees, and obviously there's some that are far better at it than others. But I think when I think about that, I think it's one of the things that really hurts this hobby. As an industry,
right,
is because everyone thinks, oh well, I can do that, so it kind of like devalues the professionals that are doing it professionally.
For sure. It's definitely, I mean, that's an interesting point, is that it is a blessing and a curse, the fact that this hobby and most of the games within it are designed to be homebrewed and hacked, and most games encourage you to do that, and there are people who do this professionally, but there's a lot more people that do it unprofessionally.
Yeah, and then there's some people that are trying to do it professionally, and it's just not the same.
Right.
So, because it's one of the things I always kind of struggle with, because just like you, we do this professionally, in a different, maybe in a little bit of a different way. We're starting to go more into the publishing now. Yeah. But one of the major obstacles is that when the fan base kind of devalues the industry, it makes it really hard for people to be successful and have a profession.
Yeah, it's really tough because, people will just hate paying for things. And this is the thing that we found out with Absolute Tabletop, is that people will always, like, if you put something out for free, they're like, well, it must not be very good. Because it's free. But if you charge for it, they're like, well, why are you charging for it? This should just be a hobby. You should just put it out for free. Like,
you'll never.
Yeah, you'll never like do the right thing, and people will never give you the money for a product in order for you to pay yourselves. It's like there's this push in the industry for RPG writers to be making 10 cents a word, which is like, okay, a livable wage. You could live on 10 cents a word. But in order for RPG companies to pay their writers 10 cents a word, people need to pay for RPGs, and people just don't. Like, people are like, $50 for a book that's going to give me thousands of hours of fun. I don't know. I don't know if I can afford it, and it's like, they'll pay $50-$60 for a video game that'll give them 15 hours of fun, but they won't do the same for a book that's been lovingly crafted.
Forget video game, to go to a movie.
Yeah, exactly. If 2 hours in a movie theater, yeah.
It's kind of crazy because that's why I hate the pay what you want. I feel like it really drives down the industry a lot.
Yes. We had some experiences with pay what you want. I hate pay what you want.
I buy so many books and back so many Kickstarters that I never even look at, but I just like to support the hobby, the industry.
Yeah, no, for sure. And especially smaller publishers, like it's important to, toss them some cash every once in a while in order for them to keep doing what they're doing.
Hopefully it's getting better.
I think it is. And I think that the more people who get into this hobby, and like you're saying, there's a lag where people are really into D&D, but they haven't necessarily shifted left or right to look at other games. And it's like, I feel like if we can get to the point where more people are kind of spread out and playing different games, we can have a little bit more influx of money into the industry so that more people can do this professionally and more people can afford to pay themselves rather than just pay for art or pay for layout or whatever.
I have a lot of artist friends, and on social media, and I hear them bitch particularly about this industry and how cheap it is. But like devil's advocate, I was like, do you understand, like, if I spend even $80 on a piece of art, like, which isn't very much at all.
Yeah.
Like, how many, like, PDFs I have to sell to make, that back.
To make up that. Yeah.
That's one single piece of art.
Yep. And then multiply that 100 times for a book, and, you're not breaking even.
and that's why we have to do Kickstarters. It's like,
well, and it's crazy too, because like you'll do a Kickstarter and you'll make $30,000 or something like that, and people are like, wow, that's really good, so you're able to pay yourselves, and you're like, no. That's all going towards the book. I don't think you understand.
Yeah, I mean, I can say that having having just sent the book off to the printer and paid for half the run and everything else just to make the book. Like, not actually have a physical book exist, but make everything that's going into the book. That was like 25 to 30 grand.
Yeah.
A better business person will tell you the exact number. But I can tell you, like, by the time we paid for everything, it was like 25 to 30 grand so that it could exist. Now we still have to pay to actually get the books.
To actually get the book and ship it. And it's crazy too, because people will message me and they'll be like, hey, how much did it cost to make this book? And I'm like, you don't want to know. You don't want me to tell you how much it takes to make this book, because it will dissuade you from ever creating anything.
The actual printing of the book is far cheaper than making the book.
Correct. Yeah, because the printing the book is like, you can do that in bulk, and the more books you print, the cheaper it is.
Yes.
But it's like, the paying for the art, paying for, someone to do layout, paying for someone to edit it, it's like that all adds up.
So here's a question. Chances D&D Spellbook asks this question almost to every guest, but I think it actually works really good with you because you're one of the OGs. Some of you may not know this, but Matt Click actually has a YouTube channel called Fistful of Dice.
I do, yeah.
That was super popular for a while, but then he stopped making awesome videos and doing other things. And he's actually inspired a bunch of YouTubers. You're like one of the originals from the RPG Brigade, right? From that crew.
Yep. Yeah, back when it was before Critical Role was a thing, and it was like you had Penny Arcade, Acquisitions Incorporated, and that was about it for your live games. And back in the day. So do you have any advice for younger D&D channels out there? Make an awesome YouTube channel and then stop making videos. Yeah, and then stop making videos. Yeah. Just stop making videos. No, so this is the same advice I used to give people back when I was a little bit more active on YouTube. And the idea is like, just try to be as authentic as possible. Like, people can tell if you're bullshitting them. And like, if you're just genuine and passionate and let the passion for the game kind of show through and give your unique perspective on the game, people will watch you. And that's not to say that like you'll get a ton of subscribers or you'll be able to make money off of YouTube or anything like that, but just like people will watch you and they'll appreciate what you have to say. So if you can be genuine and talk about things that excite you and not necessarily like the hot topic like that's going around in the industry or the community or whatever, like people will watch your videos and they will engage with you. And it's also important to engage with people right back. So that's what I would say. Like, I know anything. I've been sitting at 28,000 subscribers for I think 4 years at this point. So I don't know anything.
But that's okay because it's probably been that long since you did a video. So it's not bad.
It's funny. I run a lot of live games on my channel, but I don't do videos anymore. And it's just one of those things where it's like the creative energy that I was spending making videos is like it's being used elsewhere. It's like I've redirected that energy, and now it's like I love that I have the channel still, and that I have that as an avenue for like I want to stream a D&D game, or I want to do a Q&A, or I want to do this thing. It's like it's there, but it's not something that I ever feel like I'm going to go back to and do like weekly videos again, just because I feel like I've moved on from that aspect of it to some extent.
Sometimes you just do a thing for a while and then you've done it enough. Like, it filled the need that you had at the time. And it's still cool because you've influenced the D&D YouTube space for sure. Yeah, I know we've done quite a few video responses to videos you've done in the past. You always had great ideas, and like I said, I know people are like, I started making D&D content because I watched Fistful of Dice.
Yeah, and I mean that never gets old. That's so awesome to hear. And being quite honest with you, I would not be where I am today if I didn't have that YouTube presence. Because when I went to interview at Wizards of the Coast, Richard Witters, the art director over there, was like, "Fistful of Dice," and I was like, "Holy shit, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, watch your videos." And I was like, "Oh my god, you do?" And he's like, "Yeah, watch them all the time." And I was like, holy shit, like I just like couldn't deal with it. And it's like the fact that I put myself out there and talked just really openly about this thing that I loved and put my ideas out there really showed that I loved RPGs and that I was passionate about them. And that opened so many doors and created so many connections that I was then able to utilize to turn this into my job and working on RPGs and board games and stuff like that. So like I can't state enough just how much I appreciated that early success that I experienced on YouTube, even if I'm not as active as I was back then.
That's kind of a cool story, because that turns that cold interview into a warm interview like that.
Yes, exactly. Where I'm like, okay, this guy knows who I am. Like, cool. Like, and even if not, even if everyone in the room doesn't know who I am, they now know that Richard Witters knows who I am, so I can't be all that bad, Yeah.
Which it was super cool, It's it comes with the territory of YouTubing.
Yeah.
Well, we are basically at the hour mark here. Anything you want to say before we head on out?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on, man. This is a great chat, and I love that you guys are doing these again, especially during the pandemic. It's just really nice to be able to tune in and listen to you guys chat with interesting people, and yeah, it's great. So thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. It is a pleasure, and it's been way too long for sure.
Yes, we'll have to do this again real soon, Dave.
Especially once you have something, your next Kickstarter to launch and talk about. We'll have to have you back on.
Would love to.
So with that, until next time, everyone, stay nerdy.